Welcome to Game Changers Live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. All right, and welcome to Game Changers Live. Each and every week, you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, you name it, where we interview people who have been game changers in their field. And this week, we have somebody really, really special with us that is changing the game in the cannabis industry. So we have Fabian Monaco, and he's the president and director of Gage Cannabis. He previously worked at XIB Financial Inc, GMP Securities L.P, and Scotiabank. And so in addition to his vast investment banking and legal background, he's got 10 plus years in the capital markets. So plenty of experience there, as well as plenty of experience, extensive experience in the cannabis industry. So we're really excited to have Fabian here on Game Changers. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Sergio. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So let's get started with a bit of background on you. So you are the president of Gage Cannabis. It's one of the fastest growing cannabis brands, and you're based out of Toronto. The organization, the distribution is mainly based out of Michigan. But tell me a bit about you, who Fabian is, because you have a great story to share.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sergio. So, from my standpoint, I used to be, predominantly on the capital market side of things before I joined Gage full time. I used to be a securities lawyer, and then went into investment banking. And kind of what drew me to the industry, actually, the cannabis industry, was the fact that, within my my investment banking firm, previously GMP Securities, I was in the healthcare group, and at that time, cannabis happened to follow, under that group. And so I got to essentially join the team that had just brought Tweed public. Tweed, obviously, became Canopy Growth. And so I really got the opportunity to work on a lot of the firsts of the industry. I worked on the first acquisition when Tweed bought Bedrocan, worked on the first $100 million financing in the space, which was Canopy Growth essentially, when they raised their first $100 million. I got to work on, one of the first, few IPOs in the space as well. So really got to see the industry for now many years and how it's grown, not only in Canada, but also in the US. And then obviously slowly made my way to the Gage team and the other two co-founders. Just phenomenal operators. Really saw something special in them, and pretty much joined the company. Frankly, started the company since its inception as a co-founder about 3.5 years ago, and obviously here I am today. We just recently announced our closing of our Reg A plus financing. We raised the maximum $50 million. So a lot of excitement at the company today, and really excited, obviously, for what we have going on in the 2021 year.
The industry is such an exciting place to be right now because we are blazing a new path. It's like the gold rush, right? In 2020. And you guys started Gage Cannabis in 2017, and over just under 2 years, basically grown it to over $50 million in terms of just funding. So your valuations are a multiple of that. What an exciting place to be in your life, where you basically got your finger on the pulse. You've been on those IPOs on the front line. What was that like? And how, did you ever envision yourself doing that 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually thought, I would just be in that kind of legal finance realm for life. It was really a situation where, the industry came on so quickly and so fast. So, in Canada, we had a new prime minister that came into place and, made it a goal of his kind of, or a goal of his, first couple months or I should say first year, to legalize cannabis. And really it placed Canada on a platform almost as an example of what could be for a lot of the cannabis industry everywhere else in the world. The thing is, it went through so many ups and downs, right? So you had these times over the past 5-6 years where it was just euphoria, frankly. You know, stocks were going to crazy all-time highs. Every single cannabis company with just a story, never mind operations, were raising capital. And you saw a lot of that over the years. And then, you know, I'd say maybe in the late 18 and also obviously when we got to, you know, 2019, I should say late 2019, it really didn't look that great for the cannabis industry as a whole. You know, Canada wasn't performing where it should have been. The US names weren't really getting the love that they should have received as well. And so a lot of ups and downs. And so you really kind of feel the excitement that comes with the growth, but you also feel that you know, those troughs in the industry, they really can put you in a bad place. But overall, you know, the industry itself continues to move in a positive direction, and I think right now it's probably the most positive it's ever been.
The companies that are going to be successful in this industry are the ones that are the most professionally led and quality driven, right? Because that's what it's all about. You can't have a subpar quality product, or else you're not going to survive in this industry. Tell me about the leadership, your leadership philosophy at Gage, and the leaders within your board and so forth. What is that? What is it like working there as compared to perhaps other companies?
Yeah, so you know, when you join a team like Gage, you're joining a company that's in hyper growth mode, right? So you know, we started in 2017. We only had our first operational asset online in the middle of the summer of 2019. So pretty much everything you've seen from us in terms of growth operationally has happened in a year and a
A
half
year
or
and a
so.
half.
Yeah. So,
Unbelievable.
you know, the people that joined us, you know, the first few employees that got to see, you know, totally all that growth over the past couple of years. And then even the employees that have joined us only 6 months ago, again, you're entering into a company that is growing so quickly. The brand continues to explode. We have a phenomenal following as a brand in Michigan, and really actually are starting to get a great following across, I would say, North America. And if you take a look at our social media, whether it be, you know, our Instagram page or Twitter page, just a great amount of interaction. And so, you know, again, we try to keep dedicated to what we're doing. Everyone at the company works really hard. We have the benefit of, you know, having some of the industry leaders. Frankly, you know, Bruce Linton, I'd say he's the godfather of the cannabis industry. He was the trailblazer ahead of us all that really helped put cannabis on a professional platform. His work that he did building up Canopy Growth to what it is today was phenomenal. And you know, like anyone, there was ups and downs with, you know, his role at Canopy Growth as well. And so he's our chairman. You know, his ability to kind of teach us and show us how to deal with, you know, the continual ups and downs in the industry have been also fantastic. Even from a leadership standpoint, people being able to kind of, you know, have him discuss, you know, how he took, frankly, a company from nothing into the multi-billion-dollar company that it is today, a company that got, you know, such a massive injection of capital from pretty much one of the best, call it, brands in the world, being Constellation Brands, and all the sub brands that it has in its particular industry. Has been great. So again, you know, hardworking culture, but you know, you're part of something that's growing fast. You're part of something that's, you know, coming out with new products and new flavors and new clothing and new apparel on a daily basis. Really gets people excited.
So vision as a leader is tremendously important, and so is consistency and experience in an industry. And you've got that in Bruce, right? Where do you
Mhm.
guys see the cannabis industry going from this point forward? Where is it going to be in 10 years? What is it going to look like?
I think you're going to see explosive growth, Sergio. So, you know, the US is the largest cannabis market in the world, right? And generally it's been hampered by a lot of these, you know, regulatory issues that we all know, whether it's, you know, the tax issues that plague the industry, whether it's, you know, the legality issues that plague the industry, or even some of the regulatory issues that plague the industry. Access to banking as well, you know, another issue, another problem in this industry. I think those are all going to settle and let's call it figure themselves out over the next 6 to 12 months, hopefully earlier than that. There's a lot of excitement, especially with the Biden administration, that those problems that I just mentioned are going to be fixed sooner rather than later. And it's just so exciting for the industry. I was able to see the growth in Canada, and obviously, don't get me wrong, there have been some slip ups in the Canadian market in terms of it achieving, its full potential over the past couple of years. I think it still has a lot of work to do. But if you take a look at the U.S. and how much the U.S. cannabis industry has grown and how the companies have grown, I think in the future, it's going to be even crazier in terms of the growth. It's going to be exponential in terms of the growth, because you're having a scenario where all these little small issues, actually, I shouldn't even say small, I should say big issues that plague the industry will hopefully fall away in the next, 6 to 12 months. And it's just an exciting time. And, if there's anyone out there that's thinking about potentially joining the industry, joining in a company like Gage, now's the time, because now I think is just, where everybody's truly ramping up and getting to the point where they're preparing themselves for this massive influx of attention and capital that's going to flow into the industry over the next little while.
Therapeutics is an important result of cannabis, right, out there. It is helping a lot of people, whether they have PTSD or anxiety issues. It seems like weed, cannabis solves just about every problem on earth, right? that you might have, any ailment you may have. You have a headache? Well, okay, have some flour.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing how, that it's taken us this long to really kind of demystify or kind of, stop demonizing cannabis. So have you, where in what form or shape do you see it in therapeutic use really taken off?
I would say that's tough to tell right now. I think people, just generally consumers, do consume the product in the typical fashion that you or I would think, or let's call it the average person, which would be to obviously smoke a joint. I think majority of the people continue to consume cannabis, at least the people that do consume cannabis on a relatively frequent basis. But you see more and more new products coming online, and then the refinement of products as well, whether that be the refinement of even just an edible product and improving the taste, improving the way it actually gets consumed, and the method in terms of the way and also the experience that you have in that consumption of that particular product. It continually improves on even not just on the edible side, but in a variety of consumption type of ways. And so for the industry, it's not even so much where do we see more consumption and in what category. I just want to see more consumption generally. We hear every single day at how much the cannabis consumption of a particular individual has helped that individual through certain issues or problems that they have in their lives. And that's the best thing you want to hear. And then, even maybe, guys like myself or yourself, at the end of the week, maybe you pour yourself a drink to relax, maybe pour yourselves 2, 3, 4 drinks, people that potentially have, dependency on that type of product, let's call it, and moving more towards something that, when they wake up the next day, they're not really feeling those effects, and they can kind of kickstart their day and go and be with their families, etc. Versus the alternative where consuming 4 or 5, let's call it 6 beers in a given night, you're not going to feel so great. The average person won't feel so great the very next day, right? So, for me, what I love to see is just more consumption. I love seeing the numbers go up, especially in the legal market. It's great to pull people away from the illicit market as the legal market continues to have better quality and better service offerings in the industry, because at least people know what they're consuming as well. They know what's in those products and the safety of those products as well. So all in all, it's just great to see consumption increase. In my eyes, it doesn't really matter what particular category it's coming from.
Right, because there's a big enough pie to go around, and for basically every company out there. You guys are going public here pretty soon. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. That's very exciting. And you're going to be listed on the NASDAQ?
No, I mean,
or in
I'd love to
Canada?
be listed on the Nasdaq. Unfortunately, U.S. cannabis names can not necessarily be listed in the U.S., and that's one thing. Back
Ah,
to a couple of problems I was mentioning. One thing that I hope changes in the near future here, having access to the U.S. capital markets on a broad basis, especially when it comes to listing, is obviously particularly important to any company out there.
sure.
It's kind of like the end goal of probably many companies in the world to be one day listed on a recognized U.S. exchange, and so that's obviously the end goal. But right now, like all of our other let's call it competitors in the space, we're all going to be listed in Canada. Majority of us will be listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange. It's anticipated that Gage will also be listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange. And yeah, that's probably going to be another 4 to 6 week process for us. Hopefully sooner, but again, just want to be conservative with our timeline. But we are anticipating, sometime before the end of Q1 to be publicly traded.
Fantastic. So, Fabian, you've had, and I'm speaking with Fabian Monaco. He's the president and director of Gage Cannabis, based out of Toronto. Who they just raised a round of $50 million, one of the fastest growing cannabis companies out there with some of the highest quality products. So very happy to have him on. So and I asked this to all my guests. So if you had to look back at, you've obviously had a very successful career. You've done very, very well in an industry where you're enjoying it every day, right? You get up and you enjoy what you're doing
Yeah.
every day. What was a game-changing moment for you where either an event or something that somebody told you, an epiphany you had, something that happened to you where you can say, okay, from that point on, things really took off for me, or it turned the light on for me. It was a philosophy. What was that game-changing moment for you?
Yeah, it's a pretty easy one from my standpoint, and really it was the involvement in this industry, the ability to get
Right.
involved in the industry so early. But that came with risks, right? And
Yeah.
so not a lot of people appreciate that after the fact. And so if you take a look at where I was, so I was sitting at my desk, at a reputable independent investment banking firm, and we predominantly were focused on the healthcare market, the spec pharma market to be exact. That industry had somewhat fallen off a cliff shortly after I joined, and frankly, the group were looking for opportunities in the healthcare space that we could kind of take and run with. And frankly, the cannabis industry just fell on our lap. But again, remember, from not only the firm standpoint, but also individually, the thought process of kind of staying with the company and ensuring that, hey, this is an industry I think is going to be something. I would say actually, I think it was a good solid 5 or 6 years ago when I was in that role. When I first started sending around some of the cannabis transactions that I was a part of to my friends and colleagues, it was something that people would laugh at, and say, "Oh yeah, you're working in the cannabis industry. That's hilarious. That's so funny." Uh, Stark difference, to the
Really?
messages I was receiving today
Yeah.
after we announced our $50 million financing. And so it's one thing for the listeners to keep in mind is sometimes when you get an opportunity presented to you, it doesn't always just slap you in the face as in like this is going to be massive, this is going to be huge, because again it came with its ups and downs over the years. You look at the cannabis industry, again, you had some euphoric times and you've had some really, really dark days, and especially when a new industry comes on that looks like it's going to be so heavily regulated. You got to say to yourself, how fast is this industry going to be able to grow? Is it going to be constrained by rules and regulations, or is this industry going to really thrive the way I think it's going to thrive? And these are risks people need to take. And so again, when you look back at someone's success, you say to yourself, wow, look at that person, so lucky. Yes, they worked hard, but wow, they had a lot of luck. But remember, it's not only luck, it's hard work as well. But more importantly, that person took on that risk. They took on that I guess let's call it decision to say, you know what, I think what I'm doing here is right. I think what I'm involved in is right as well. I think it's going to be huge, and it's staying dedicated to that thought process that really brings out the success in an individual or an industry generally.
And you had to go all in, right? Because when
Pretty
an
much.
opportunity presents itself, you can't always dabble. At times, you got to either double down and say, okay, I'm going to go in on this, even though perhaps others don't see the opportunity, and that's what makes it golden, right? They may laugh at you at first, they don't see it themselves, but later on, the hard work pays off.
Totally, totally. It's at times, everyone would love to de-risk, their various decision making, uh, processes in their life. But at times, that you need to also just say to yourself, okay, I really need to commit myself 110% to this, this venture or this job or this part of my life to really bring out success in the end. And it's not always apparent at first, right? Even for, a company like Gage, when we were looking at when COVID started to ramp up in terms of its negativity and issues that it's created in the world, everyone at Gage, we were looking at ourselves like, wow, like, are we actually going to even be able to have this business continue running? And the fact that we had cannabis considered an essential business as a whole in Michigan was obviously a blessing in disguise. In fact, it was probably the start of the positive momentum that we saw in the cannabis space just this past year in 2020. But at that time, when again, you're turning on the news, looking at all the COVID cases around the world, looking at some of the difficulties countries were going through, talks about lockdowns and shutdowns, and you sitting there wondering, wow, is my company even going to survive? And then now, not even a year later, but frankly, only like 9 months later, seeing where we are today, again, a stark difference, right? So you go through these ups and downs with anything. Nothing's ever perfect. Nothing goes straight up. Nothing, just gets you to your goal immediately. And so it's some of these, let's call it, trials and tribulations that are associated with anybody's success, regardless if it's, mine or a company's, et cetera. It's just, it doesn't always work out initially or, along the way as people think.
So tell me a story about a time perhaps in Gage Cannabis or in any of the other capital market experiences you had where, like we said, you're breaking new ground, you're doing things that nobody's ever done before. Were there mistakes along the way where you guys just didn't see something coming and hit you guys, you went sideways, and how did you overcome that? Have you had those experiences?
Yeah, there's just so many. There's so many in the industry, right? Yeah, it just it's a matter of there were so many things that were thrown at this industry, whether you were involved in the industry in Canada or the U.S. It, in Canada, the rollout of retail obviously hit everybody pretty hard. It wasn't as fast as everyone was expecting. Even in Canada, you didn't even have the full product set of available, products in this industry right away when legalization, started. You had to wait a full year for a brand new product set being edibles to actually be allowed to be sold, in the industry. You take a look at the cannabis industry as well in the U.S., just the consistent, hitting a wall when it comes to regulations where seeing each and every state on a one-by-one basis, either going to a medical program or an adult use program, and the difficulties, each and every state has to go through. And even in Michigan, in terms of the way that program rolled out, you had basically the second largest medical cardholder system in the U.S., behind only California, and yet it took, I would say, quite a bit of time for the Michigan, market to really start to ramp up after it was introduced in 2017. So in 2017, we had medical only in Michigan. And I would say it took almost a full year for that program to really get started and really for, the supply to actually come online. And then at that point, adult use was essentially, approved and came into play December 1st, 2019. And again, even that took some time. And so you kind of, you're always throwing a curveball in this industry. Things that you think will be fast end up being slow. Things you think are going to be slow end up being really fast. It's like you're constantly, on the treadmill at, such a super high speed, just trying to make sure you're not falling off.
And how do you keep up your own motivation and your own self-talk and your own confidence when all you're getting hit from directions, you don't see them coming on all sides? Like, how do you keep showing up every day in a consistent manner and a high level?
You just got to have faith in your previous experiences and the way you think about things, and trying to employ that to each and every curveball that gets thrown at you, to make sure that you feel confident about the decision you're making. It's not just like one item that happens to a company that could derail it. It's always a couple of little items, I find. As long as you are keenly focused on the bigger items, though, regardless, and making sure that you're doing the best possible decision making process for you and the company, I think is pretty key. It's tough sometimes to stay motivated when you have so much negativity thrown at you, or the curveballs are coming in fast and hard. But at the end of the day, you just got to look at your past experiences, say to yourself, okay, like, look at all those previous 5 issues that I had to deal with. I got through those by doing, X, Y, Z. Now let me look at these next couple and let me focus on A, B, C here, because, I got through those other ones. These are just a new set of problems that I have that I need to get through. And of course, it's not always easy. It's easier said than done. But again, that's how I stay positive. Every curveball or every issue that gets thrown my way, or that gets thrown the company's way, you sit down, you hunker down, and you figure out how to solve the issue, and you move forward, and you have the confidence because you've solved 100 issues before it.
Fabian, thank you so much, my brother, for being on. President and director of Gage Cannabis, one of the fastest growing cannabis companies in Canada and in the US. So definitely keep an eye out for them. They're going to be blowing up. Thank you, brother, for being on Game Changers.
Thank you so much, Sergio. I really appreciate having me on today.
If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it.